Hey everyone, this is Dr. Russ Jones.
And Brad Kennan.
We are wide open. How are you? How you doing, my friend?
I'm always great, man.
Good.
I'm
I'm glad to hear that.
smiling. I'm smiling. It's been getting warmer out. That's awesome. We can be outside. We can do
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Except we had some storms go through Ohio. Was it last week or this week? Yeah, last week. Right after, in fact, it was right after we did our podcast last week. I think it was the following morning. Um, so I'm in bed, asleep. My wife comes in and wakes me up and says, "You should probably get up. We're having tornadoes." I said, "Well, sure, why not? I should probably get up." So I got up and I told her, put some pants on and put some jeans and a sweatshirt on and some shoes. And I walked outside and it looks pretty bad and it's raining. And I'm outside and I'm watching and everything gets really still. The rain stops and I'm looking out past our house at the other side of the neighborhood because we live, we all have a couple acre lots, and this is, I have a court just south of us. It's got houses, not maybe acre. Some lots are 2, 3, 4 acres. Um, I'm literally watching, and it looks like the sky is on fire. So the next thing I know is I hear this roar, this noise. So I said, well, I should probably go into my house at this point in time. So I went in my house, went downstairs. Power goes off. Um, go back outside. A couple minutes later, everything's still warm out. No rain, no nothing. Get in my truck, drive down the road. Literally trees across the road, power lines down. Snapped 4 poles off. Went around to the backside of the field that we back up to some fields. Went over there, power lines down. Just come to find out there was 5 tornadoes in the area. It was an F2 that literally was about 1,000 feet away from my house.
Dang.
Yeah. So I took the drone, I threw the drone in the air, got some footage, saw where it went through the field, took some trees down, took some fences down, took power lines down. Luckily, it didn't hit anybody in my neighborhood or where we live. On the neighborhood behind us, it took out a bunch of buildings, sheds, barns, things like that. Houses were damaged. Another one, there was an airport not too far away, like a small civil airport. Took out hangars, flipped planes over. We drove past that the other day, and literally there's still planes and ditches and all that kind of stuff. So that was pretty exciting last week.
Jeez.
But I was thankful that we were not hit.
No doubt. Hey, I got another question about you. I was thinking about you this morning. So
Oh, great. What were you
Facebook,
doing?
Instagram,
Sure.
all these social media sites were off this morning.
Oh, they were? I didn't even know that.
Oh, okay. Well, you're kind of out of the loop. I think you were up running your crew today, but yeah,
Right.
there was like 6 or 7 different social media sites that were all down today.
Okay,
So
so
all the tinfoil hat people were out saying that something was going on.
well, they're saying, so that when was that? Maybe 2 weeks ago we had a cell phone outage
Yeah.
along, all over the country, and they said it was solar flares. It was not solar flares by any way, shape, or form. Basically, in the industry that I am in, we are in the telecom industry, so we deal with fiber. That's what we deal with. And we talked to someone in the business. They're doing a bunch of rebuilds at some major carriers because they have told us that literally anybody with a third grade education could probably hack into their systems and shut the cell networks down. They're pretty wide open, and the only way, because they've been built and they've been stacked on and stacked on and stacked on, and software's been there for a long time and it's been added on and changed and just all the stuff. And they said, literally people, bad actors could take our cell networks down fairly easily, and they would not be surprised if it happens in the future.
So you think that this was, the cell phone thing was bad actors?
I do. Yeah, I think somebody got in and hacked the system, and
If I
maybe
name it, I'll probably get in trouble.
yeah, maybe they're checking vulnerability, see what's going to happen. I know that like 911 has their own network, so they have their own separate network on all the cell towers. Period. So they have their own antennas. So hopefully, 911 and some of those emergency channels would stay up if something does happen. I don't know. I'm not an expert, so I don't really know. But anyway, that was interesting. So yes, did they hit the cell towers first, and now they're hitting all? How can all the social media sites go down? Really? How can just social media sites? It's not like they're all on the same set of servers.
I don't know. Nobody's talking about it anywhere except for on podcasts.
Right. They're everywhere. So how is that even possible? Unless it's the government testing their ability to take those things down themselves. The NSA or somebody like that, taking their stuff down and seeing how that goes. But that's just, that's our tinfoil hats working.
There you go.
Anyway.
What you got going on for us?
Well, I like Bigfoot. You like Bigfoot.
Yeah.
We've been following Bigfoot for a while.
Yes.
And we have a guest coming on. She is from the West Coast, and so do not hold that against her. She seems very nice. I can see her laughing at me in the background. She seems very nice. I do believe she is an author, which she has a nice coffee table book that you have. She has had a daylight sighting of these elusive creatures, and she is a member of the North American Wood Ape Conservancy.
Hey, we've had some friends on there from there.
Yeah, and I do believe I see the Tribal Relations Program Manager for the U.S. Forest Service. So welcome, Kathy Strain, to our show. And do not get offended because I said you're from the West Coast. You're from the good West Coast, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, good. How are you doing tonight? Or for you, it's
Pardon?
like afternoon, so we appreciate you doing
5 o'clock. It's
right.
Light's
So we
still
appreciate
out
you doing that.
there. Yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
All right, Russ, this is your guest. This is right in your wheelhouse, man.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, because I was so excited. I told Kathy before the show, we're always on here talking for a few minutes that, a lot of us that are in Bigfoot for a long time kind of know each other from a distance, but sometimes on the opposite ends of the coast, we don't get a chance to meet. So I told her I was really excited to meet her. I had years and years ago, we had exchanged some messages or whatnot, and I'd gotten her book, and I was holding it up earlier that everybody can see the Giants, Cannibals, and Monsters. And it was funny. I was looking through this the last couple of days to refresh my memory, and I saw that she had signed it for me there, which was kind of cool. And Kathy, I know that a lot of times that that character, it's kind of the weeping. But I can't recall where that was from. Is that Utah or?
No, it's in California. It's on the Tule River Indian Reservation, and that's the Hairy Man.
The Hairy Man.
Yeah, Painted Rock, the Hairy Man pictographs.
Okay. Well, I'd love to hear about.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know that you had your work. You did your own work with a lot of different groups. You were independent there for a while, and with the independent people. And I'm sure being in California, you were probably doing stuff with some of the Beefro people. And then eventually you got hooked up with Alton Higgins and the guys from down there. And I'd love to hear about how you got involved with that group and what that's been like for you.
Oh, sure. So just kind of a funny story. When I came, I'm a native Californian, but I had gone to Nevada for a little while to gain some skill sets. And my mom told me I had to come back to California because she was missing her grandchildren too much. And so I had to come back to California. But, a lot of people believe that, the internet's always been around, talking about it going down or whatever. But in the old days, us old people didn't have the internet. And so when I came back to California.
We survived, didn't we?
We certainly survived, yes. And we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have any of that stuff. So when I came to California, I'm actually the Heritage Resource and Tribal Relations Program Manager. So I'm both the forest archaeologist and the forest tribal person. And so when I got here, I believe I got here in 98. So I've been here a long time. We actually got our own computers because everywhere else I had been, we had all like 4 people share one computer. But because I was a higher level, I got my own computer. And just one night I'm bored and I said, oh, look at this thing called the internet. And you know, you had it, but it was always work related. And I just typed in Bigfoot, to see what's going on in there. And all of a sudden I was like, there's all these groups that, study Bigfoot, and I found the BFRO. And so I just, for whatever reason, I noticed that they had a little tribal section on their front page. And I said, oh, well, they're missing a bunch of tribes that believe in Bigfoot. So I sent them an email and said, hey, this is who I am. And just let you know, you're missing some tribes. No big deal. I immediately got called back by Robert Leiderman, if you know who he is. And he called and talked to me for some time. And then the next day, Matt Moneymaker said, hey, how would you like to join the group? And we'll make you the highest level in the group because they have curators and investigators. And I said, well, sure. And at that time, the curators were Jeff Meldrum, Bender Noggle, Krantz was still alive, so he was a part of that group. John Green. I mean, it was just all these names, and so
Who's who?
Like, oh yeah, it was definitely the who's who at the time. And so I was in the BFRO and I did research with them, and then after I met my husband, he joined as well. And then about 2005, we left the group and started our own group, which we still have. It's the Alliance of Independent Bigfoot Researchers. And then I don't remember what year, maybe 2010. But Alton Higgins was a part of the original BFRO, as well as Craig Woolheater. Just a lot of Texas guys were a part of the BFRO as well. And they had invited me down a couple times to give talks in Texas. And I'm going to say like 2010 is when they started talking to me about this place called Area X. It was just crazy. Oh, maybe it's 2011. Years, they go by so fast when you're old. And so they had said, Kathy, you have to come down to this place. You have to see what's going on. And really, we would like a scientific opinion of what is happening on this property. And so Bob and I talked about it, and we said, well, your family lives in Texas. We could make this a family trip, a little trip for just us, meander down to Oklahoma, give this a whirl, and then come back and spend time with Bob's family that were in Dallas. So we decided to do that. And we got to, they call it Area X, not for any particular purpose that it's like ominous or anything. It just happened they had 3 study sites, and there was X, Y, and Z, and X just happened to be the one spot that actually had something happening at it. And so, and I'm still, in the group, of course, but very dear friends with many members of that group. And so, but I went in independently. We're not members of the group at this time. And I was just going to assess and give my opinion of you guys are making this stuff up, or you guys, this is clearly this or whatever. So the first day we got there, and it was boring, plus the hottest place in the history of hot. And so this was May of 2012. And I was like thinking to myself, what did I get myself into? Because there's the road is horrifying going in. I mean, and I'm a Forest Service archaeologist, and I have been on roads that should never in this world been on, but I've seen awful, horrible things. I've been stuck on the sides of cliffs before. I have been in places where I was going to abandon the car and just walk the rest of the way because it was so bad. This one was even worse. And so, yeah. And when you get there, there's 4 cabins, but the owner who invited us, you're only allowed to stay in his cabin, and it was just, if I don't know if the word cabin really is justified. I mean, if that was on my national forest, I would have recorded it as an historic site. I mean, it was barely a cabin, and they don't have, there's no electricity, no running water, nothing. It's just a place to have over your head in case it rains, which it will do every 15 minutes on random. So the second day, there's 5 of us there total, and it's called our week, and so we have these weeks that people are assigned to, and then other people are not supposed to come in at that time. You know, it's that week is our operations. And so during the afternoon, all of a sudden, stuff started happening. There was rocks being thrown on the cabins. All had tin roofs, and one rock would be thrown over here, and we'd run over there, and then it'd be thrown up where we just were, and it kept going back and forth and back and forth. And I was just getting sick and tired of it. I said, like, this is a joke, you know? And so I stayed behind. And they finally came back, and we're just sitting there, and we're sitting kind of in a semicircle, just talking. It's broad daylight, you know, I could see everything. And then all of a sudden, there they were. There was 2 of them, and they were walking. There's this kind of like a hillside that's got a little creek running next to it, and then the cabin is adjacent to that. And pretty much all the ground's covered in greenbrier or tons of stuff that'll trip you or knock you down or whatever. But there's one little spot that it was a little more open, was probably at one time you could drive to each cabin, but you can't do that now. Anyway, we call that place a bottleneck because it's got, you know, it's a little less vegetated than every place else. And anyway, there they are. They're coming right at us. And there's a big one and a little one, but big by like just because they're bigger, but not like a huge one. And I jump up and I go, there they are. And I started running after them. I ran towards them. And of course, beforehand, they had been doing some kind of weird little, like, I had the impression that it was an older sister who was taking care of her bratty little brother. And the bratty little brother was fully intended to get as close to us as it could get. I was thinking they were trying to get behind the shed that was right there. And of course, you know, I have a higher voice, and there's not a lot of women that go into this area. And so I always wondered if that was the attraction, that my thought I was a child or something to that effect. But so essentially, I got glad I could do this, because usually you can't see my fingers and it makes me feel stupid. I'm doing this. I'm just see what I'm doing. But essentially, the big one is trying to get the little one to go up the hill and away from us. And the little one just keeps coming towards us, and they're doing like this little, you know, like running into each other type of thing, because they don't know what they're doing. They're trying to be quiet. But I can, you know, we saw them, we heard them first, and we just thought, oh, it's a fox or something making all that noise. And then, you know, anyway, so I get up, run at them, straight at them, and they, you know, skid, you know, like, oh my God, you know, crazy lady coming at us. And they ran up that hill faster than anything I have ever seen in my life. They were like they were on a bungee and just got let go, and they just went, phew. And they had been loud when they were, you know, doing that. I don't think they realized we were sitting there. I think the rock trick was part of getting us to go away so that they could get through. And but when they went up that hill, it was like there was no sound whatsoever. It was like all of a sudden they were floating on air or something. There wasn't any kind of sounds at all. And it was a pretty good steep little, I mean, you could climb it, but you worked at it to get up it. And I got there just in time to be right behind the bigger one and could look at the muscle structure. So beautifully muscular butt, really beautifully muscled thighs. I mean, just built for walking, just as muscle as you could think. And anyway, they get up and they get out of our view. And the little one I didn't really pay as much attention to, but at one point, it kind of sort of looked like it went down on all fours to go faster, but I wasn't really concentrating on it. I was really looking at the one because I wanted to get as much out of it as I can. And it's later on, we had previously put out a camera that was triggered by video or movement, sorry, and I'm the one who triggered it. So if I had 2 seconds a piece, we might have gotten some video of them coming by. But I was excited because that was my first sighting, and I was just like, I don't know what I expected them to do. I don't know. Doesn't matter now, kind of thing. But and I know a lot of people always say, "Oh, there was a hoax." Well, if that was a hoax, then that was custom made costumes, because the little one was probably 4 foot tall at best, and the bigger one was a thin, maybe 6 feet at best, maybe a little litter. It was just, I just noticed there was a difference between the big one and the little one. And you could see the muscles moving, the muscle structure underneath it. Plus everybody there was well armed, including myself. When I was running towards them, I had a weapon on me that I could have, of course, coulda, shoulda, woulda, could have gotten a shot off, but it wasn't on my mind at that moment. It was just seeing as much as I possibly could of these creatures. So
how far away were you?
Not very far. I showed somebody at a conference one, and they were pretty impressed, but let's see, maybe 60 feet, maybe.
Dang. I mean, 60 feet's
Wow,
a pitcher's
that's
mound
close.
to home plate.
A what?
A pitcher's mound to home plate is 60 feet, 6 inches.
And probably even a little closer than that, actually. So, but it was broad daylight. You could see the sunshine on their hair. It was just amazing. And then the rest of that week was like, when we got out, we spent a week, when we got out, physically drove back out and got to a paved road, me and Bob turned and looked at each other and went, it was like you had been to Vietnam. It was just a war the rest of the week. So it was just constant rocks being thrown at us, constant making noises around the cabin. It was just constant. And so it was just, I remember one time Brian Brown was there, and we had just come in, and he yells in the middle of the night. I think it's like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. He yells, "I've had enough."
That's
And
hilarious.
we were like, "What is wrong with you?" We get up, and he goes, "One just came onto the porch," and because I had kind of felt it where the whole cabin went, and then dust had come out of the rafters, and I was like, "Wonder what that is." And then he yells, and the worst part about that stupid cabin is it had one big plate glass window in one of the rooms, and so everything else was kind of more proportionate and stuff like that, but it had one that you're just totally exposed. There's something, the hand that came through the window kind of
Oh
thing.
my gosh.
But I remember it was so much, it was just terrifying. And then we had one bluff charge. One of our members went right through the brush right up on him. I mean, it was just a lot that happened that week.
Did anyone else have a sighting that week?
Oh, well, I forgot to mention the 5 of us were sitting there. 4 saw exactly the same thing. So Bob, Brian Brown, and Mark McClurkin. The 5th guy apparently was blocked by the outhouse. He didn't have the view that we had. Yeah, we have this running joke that he's seen more people see Bigfoot than he has ever seen. Go ahead.
This was not. This was a multiple person sighting, multiple Bigfoots in the daytime.
Yes.
So we can positively say that Bigfoot is real and it does exist.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm an anthropologist. I know what apes, gorillas, and all that stuff looks like. So I have no doubt whatsoever.
Have you ever been back?
Oh yeah, no, we've been back many times. And later on that week, then Bob got to see another one. He saw and so these ones were kind of like a dark brown or black kind of color. And then later that week, Bob saw another one that was Irish setter color. Mm-hmm. And so he got 2 sightings in 1 week. Figures. But, And then
You know,
I have also seen a big gray one there as well. And plus,
wow.
and then a baby black one. So I've had
A,
3 sightings there of 4 total.
a lot of people go a lot of time in the woods and never see one.
Mhm.
There, Russ.
Yeah.
Russ has never seen one. That's a jab at him. He spends a lot of time in the woods, going out
Well-
there looking for these things, and he's never seen one. So sometimes
Well,
you just get lucky, right?
Yeah, sometimes, but I also think I think these animals, you know, we typically had a kind of figured out when they'd be around, you know, kind of thing, because it was got to be routine sort of when stuff would happen. And
Okay.
I have always believed that there's something in that general area that's a resource that they use. And so they need that resource. I mean, I'm sure there's other, and I'm sure when we don't have any sightings, they're using a different path to get through the area to get to that resource. But I think the easiest way is probably through that compound, and so that's why they use it. It's because it's, you know, a straight line versus if they have to go all the way around, it may be more difficult. But I've always wondered what that resource is, and I did a long study trying to look for salt or other minerals that might be needed for a diet. I wasn't successful in doing that. And so I still believe that because there's just no reason for them to continually go from one side to the other side. But they typically would go, let's see, south in the morning. And then if we're going to have a night sighting, it's going to be them going back north. Pretty sure I got that right. So
that's interesting.
So something that they need in those locations. But how far south, I don't know. How far north, we don't know. So
let me ask you this, Kathy. I know that I don't remember whether it was Michael Mays or one of the other guys that we'd had on that we were talking to about that, but they had changed locations. They lost the original cabins that the owner or something changed there in that situation. And they're kind of in the same area, maybe the same valley, but, you know, a little ways away. But while they're still having activity, it doesn't seem to be as much activity any longer. Does that seem still to be true?
Yes, I would agree with that. We're not very far at all. You can walk to the old cabin. And so you're just talking, you know, very little difference. So why is the activity not? We still get activity, but not as high as the craziness that was going on there. And again, I think that's because we don't have we don't have what they need. It's still at the original location of what it is that they're seeking out or whatever that they're doing. I mean, I know, and I'm not saying Bigfoot is a person or anything like that, but we do know Native Americans would move on the landscape for certain resources as things maybe came into bloom, or when they, you know, it was mature fruit or whatever. And we call it a seasonal round. So they would go up the hill at a certain time, and then by the time winter gets here, they're back at their home village with the deer dried and all that stuff. And I always wondered if there was something similar to that at certain times of year, maybe there's, like I said, something there that we don't recognize it. And it maybe it's because it's not a resource humans use. It's a resource, you know, they need, and we can't recognize it for what it is.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I mean, that seems really reasonable to me. You know, when you said it about your sighting, have you had another sighting? Is it somewhere else, or?
All my sightings have been in Area X.
Okay.
I've had tons of other things happen in California or other areas, but my only sightings have been there in Oklahoma in Area X.
So if you had to go and someone was going to give you a week and, you know, unlimited resources, would you choose X still to go to, or would you choose someplace else now?
Yes, I would go to X.
So has the group started to try to adapt or change because they're not getting as much activity in that particular place to come up with some type of?
Oh yeah.
new process or something?
Yes, they're working on that all the time. They're all very experienced in hunting in the sense of looking for elusive animals. And so they each, I mean, our NAWAC's got biologists, wildlife biologists. We got scientists galore. We got people who are professional game hunters. We got military, ex-military. I mean, it's just a very eclectic but very experienced group. And so, they do a lot of different things to try to get what it is that we need, which is evidence, of course. We need DNA. We need hopefully a body one of these days so we can just put the matter to rest if Bigfoot's real or not. And so they've got cameras put everywhere. They've got, we have these little things. I probably should read Tag 7, which is available on the website, about us being able to tag something that was very tall, and got this huckleburr tracker in its fur, and we were able to track where that animal went. And so it never hibernated, so we know it's not a bear. Plus we know we hung it at like 7 or 8 feet, and it did kind of go. It was more active in certain areas based on the season for sure, but I highly recommend reading that paper that's available on the NAWAC's website for free, of course.
So let me ask you
how long?
Go ahead, Brad.
How long did that tracker last for?
Its battery died, I believe, almost at a year, I believe. So the battery life on those things aren't particularly good. So,
okay.
I remember there was a lot of times, I don't remember which one of the guys was talking to us about it. We had an extensive conversation about that Tag 7 and how close, a number of times that the researchers had got. I mean, sometimes within a couple hundred yards, and just could not see it, but the train is not suitable for, always having a good view or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's, I mean, I complain all the time about our woods here in California, mostly because it's dead and down trees, and it's just hard to maneuver. But back there, it is just something different. It's just so, I mean, first of all, to call those things trees is sort of an insult to our trees because they're more like twigs. I guess it's kind of like your mountains aren't really mountains. We have mountains.
No.
I don't
Right.
But the greenery, the lushness of the plants themselves is incredible. And many times I knew that Bob was just a few feet from me, but I couldn't find him. And so it didn't take much to just, especially if you're wearing a green or you have dark colored fur, it's very difficult. And I always made the habit of wearing pinks and fluorescent blues and stuff so that, somebody would always know where I was anyway. And so, there was several very exciting where we're like, oh, it's beeping, it's right there. And they're sending it through the radio, and people are telling us through emails, oh, it's right there, it's right there. And we were just like, or they're going to get a picture, they're going to get something, and then couldn't find it. So,
when you're talking about it, it makes me wonder, Brad and I used to talk all the time about, chasing the virgin Bigfoot that, especially here in West Virginia, where we have areas that are dozens of miles in between little roads and very steep terrain where people cannot get easily, that if we were just in the right place and we could maybe encounter, a family group or something that didn't have much experience with humans, that wasn't around humans a lot. And it makes me wonder that when the group went into X, that maybe there just wasn't that many people around there, that they didn't have that much experience around people.
I definitely had the distinction that they were very curious about us, because it always seemed like, I mean, several times we scared a Bigfoot that appeared to have been watching us. That was like he didn't want to be seen. He wanted to be watching us to see what we were doing, and we did something unexpected. So for, just as I was the last one up one day, and I look across the compound and there's a Bigfoot that literally looks like it just got off the ground and then was leaving because maybe his shift was up. Okay, all 5 of them are you know, standing there. I can account for all of them, and that was the big gray one that I saw, and it was just like, how come nobody noticed that? You know what? And I'm looking right at it, and of course, the funny part is everybody's talking, and when you got most people talk, they're talking to each other, and when I talk, I'm always looking around. I don't tend to talk into somebody's face because when I'm there, I want to look around and be aware of what's going on. And that's how I got the sighting. But my impression is that he had been laying on, and they went over there. I pinpointed exactly where it was. And I had Bob stand in the same opening, and Bob looked like a little tiny butterfly. I mean, he was just this little tiny thing. And I was like very impressed, but it was clear something had been laying on the ground. It had a perfect view of the cabin right from that exact spot. If you were laying down on the ground and looking just over this log, perfect view. And then I just happened to catch it getting up and then exiting the area. So, and they found the area how he exited towards the creek. And so, and then we lost him in the creek. So.
Wow. So I wanted something else I was really curious about. I mean, you're highly educated. You have held respectable jobs for the federal government. What have your colleagues thought about your interest in Bigfoot?
Oh, they find it really interesting. And I often get colleagues that come in and say, well, this happened to me today. What do you think about it? And I'll go, well, that doesn't sound like anything that I've ever heard of before. I think you just encountered a normal animal. But I do occasionally get some super weird stuff that comes my way where, a biologist, she had a biologist have a Bigfoot sighting, broad daylight, that involved 2 deer. He had come across a dead deer in the woods. And it's actually really weird because this place is kind of well known for Bigfoot stuff happening. And anyway, so he found the deer, found it dead. Its head was twisted off. And he thought, well, that is really, really odd. I don't know what that is. And he thought about it as weird. And then he's walking back towards his car. And then he comes across another deer that's just shaking. It's just standing there shaking, looking off into the distance. And he was able to go over and touch it. And he goes, he gave him the creeps. He's all, what's going on? I mean, he turns and he looks. And there's a Bigfoot right there. And the Bigfoot saw him, and all it did was just walk a little way and go behind a tree. And it didn't come out of the tree. And then, so now he's all like, and so he runs as fast as he can, gets in his car, goes back to the office, tells his boss what happened, and quit.
Wow.
And I was an archaeologist. I was here at that time. I just didn't know it had happened. And I was able to then call him later on and get more details from him. And he told me, I'll tell you, but if anybody else ever asks me, it never happened. I don't want to deal with this under any circumstances. And I was like, so that really changed your opinion? He said it changes everything because you just don't even know. We're not told that this could even ever happen. And then when it happens to you, what do you do with it? I can't tell anybody because it's going to make me look like I'm a weirdo. And so that's kind of, when you're a professional like that and your profession is wildlife biologist or whatever, you fear for what will my peers think of it. And in my case, I have never had any problems. I've never had any blowback or anything of that sort. So.
Yeah, I mean, you were kind of open-minded about it, whereas he, was cynical, didn't believe it. It's funny. I remember a couple other professionals. I've heard them say that, you have certain beliefs when you're hunting and you're in the woods and you're a woodsman. All of a sudden, something else. So all the beliefs that you've had since you were a young man, it's hard for us to process all that. Well, what do we do with that? That all of a sudden, our main frame, our belief system is challenged. So what else could or not be real or not real?
Yeah. And it was, and I believe in Bigfoot, and I even had a meltdown. So after all this happened and we kind of, we were in the process of going, we got to go follow it, and whatever. And I'm not one who behaves badly or unprofessionally, and I was cussing those Bigfoots out like they stole my husband. I mean, I was cussing and just because I was going into shock, and I had to somehow get this off of me, or I was going to go into shock. And so I sort of kind of knew what was happening at the time, but it was just like, it was so much. I was just like, and we kind of, this is actually a pretty funny story. So we talked about it, what had happened, because him and I sharing this experience, Bob and I, we, for the whole way back, driving back from Texas back to California home, we didn't talk about anything except that. And we kept going, do you remember this? Yeah, do you remember that? And I remember I wrote down every single thing that had happened immediately after it happened so I could remember all the details. And then, we go out to our garden and we'd sit out there and you go, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Did you notice this? Yeah. And we'd go, back and forth. And we have a very dear friend. Well, he's more Bob's friend because he just tolerates me, but who's a psychiatrist. And he's dabbled in Bigfoot, and he wanted to know more about it. And so he invited us to his office in San Francisco. And we go in, we sit down, and he goes, okay, so tell me what happened. And we just go, blah. And, 15 minutes of just saying, and then this happened or whatever. And the look on his face, he didn't know what to do with it. So he got up. And he said, well, I have to go. You guys don't have to go. If you stay, just shut the door, turn off the lights, and stay as long as you want. And just left. And me and Bob looked at each other like, what just happened? He just left. He invited us to come all the way to San Francisco, which is a 2.5 hour drive for us. He spends 15 minutes talking to us, and then that's it. And it was just, and then he never talked to Bob again. It took him like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years to even send Bob an email. And it was just like, obviously, yeah, he knew we weren't crazy. He knew what we had experienced. And it was too much for him to take in. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
And, I mean, he's a professional, and you would think he is the one that could take it in and analyze it.
What I mean, are we the weirdest things he's ever heard? I find that hard to believe. He's heard that
very hard to believe.
Yeah,
especially
San Francisco.
That's why I believe that some of the woo things that people have happen is in fact because it's too much for us to be able to take in or understand at one time. And, our brain kind of has to reboot for a second on what's going on, and people come up with all these different things. But I think there's things in life that, whether it has to do with Bigfoot or other things, that we just can't always process, whether it's evil or extreme good or whatever it happens to be, that sometimes, it's just not what we expect. It's not what we've learned. And, we're not sure what to do with it.
Yeah. And then that's how the human brain works. I mean, we have categories for things, and everything fits in a category because it makes us feel safe. And if we don't feel safe, we can't function. And so that's how we deal with things. Everything has a place. And if something isn't in its place, or I don't know what you are, disregard.
Exactly.
You're going over here. And so there's, I had experienced one time, and I don't know what it is, but I was leaving early for work one morning. And in the old days when I didn't mind getting up early to go to work, and I looked across the road, and my neighbor had his trash bag, a black trash bag, sitting in the middle of his driveway. And I was like, well, that's stupid. He's just going to have to get up and move that before he can leave his driveway. And then I looked, and I was looking to make sure there was no traffic. And I went, well, that's really odd, because I don't think today's trash day. And so as I pulled out onto the road, I looked over again, and the trash bag was gone. So I don't know what it was, but in my mind, it was a trash bag. And so could that have been a bear that curled up? Could it have been a Bigfoot curled up and acting like a trash bag? I don't have any idea. All I know is I saw a trash bag, and when I went back, turned and went right by it, it was no longer there. And so how many times does that happen to people where my mind says I am seeing X, but it's really Y. And most of those times that's because when you're looking at it and you're going X, 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 it usually then moves or stands up or does an action that then it's no longer X. So now, what is this?
Matt Pruin and I have talked about that the brain instantly tries to categorize things into what it's most likely. And when Brad knows, one time I believed that I saw a Bigfoot, but when I glanced, I thought it was a hiker with a bad backpack and went down on one knee to call my dog. And when I stood up, I recognized that it wasn't a hiker. Nothing was there. It was off trail. But my brain had told me hiker because that was probably what was most likely to be there. So now, and many people have heard me say this many times, when I go in the woods, I remind myself, pause at everything. Any sound I hear, something I think I see, pay attention. It's hard to do, though. Our brains, are magnificent at doing that.
Well, that's how we got to be the species that we are. Otherwise, I imagine our ancestors, they're hunting woolly mammoths, were more open to seeing whatever was out there because that was their food resource. But once our food resource becomes the grocery store, we're so incredibly unaware of things in our surroundings because we just, I tell my husband all the time that this generation that can't read cursive, can't, function without the internet or their phones is.
They don't understand what's around them right now at all. Going down the street, let alone, if they stick them in the woods or, anything like that. They're just, most of them, take a kid out of the city that's, you're right, that doesn't know how to read a clock.
Yeah. And it's becoming so much so that, you meet kids that don't know what a tomato is. If you tell them it's ketchup, they go, oh yeah, but this is a raw tomato. They see a cow and they think the cow is a wild cow who could kill them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They don't know.
There's a certain percent of kids that believe that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. And it's like, really? I mean, these people are going to be running our government at some point because this is
going to be taking care of you when you're old.
Yeah. They are running our government because they're the ones that, you're somebody out, you had a senator out in California, I think Dianne Feinstein. I do believe she voted after she died somehow, if that's possible. But anyway.
Of course. Everything's possible.
Right. Hey, let me ask you this, Kathy. I mean, you come at this from a unique perspective because you're a scientist and, like I said, you're an educated person and you've been doing the Bigfoot thing for a while. At first, you were just interested in Bigfoot. Here we are, all these years later, you've had some sightings. How has your opinion of Bigfoot changed in terms of, what you believed before versus, your ever-evolving belief now as to, what we're dealing with and what we're looking at? Have you formed opinions that way?
Well, definitely. I mean, when I was in the BFRO, I would read witness statements, kind of thing. And probably the greatest change would be that when I would get a sighting that they would say that, and the Bigfoot was running after my car and it was keeping up with my speed, I go, roll my eyes, toss, kind of thing. And now after that experience, I were like, oh, I think that was possible. Yeah. I don't know how long I could do it, but it certainly could do it for a period of time because they're fast when they need to be, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know necessarily if anything else has changed. Maybe the experience, I have heard them do that ninja or whatever that
samurai chatter
myself. And so I believed it was possible before I knew Ron Moorhead and Al Berry. And plus that where that was recorded is on my national forest. And so
oh really?
Yeah. And I had heard that gibberish type stuff years ago. It's probably the furthest away from a car I've ever been. I mean, I was way out there and it was by myself, which was completely stupid. But when you're young, you just got to get the job done. And I had to do a survey and it was way out in the middle of nowhere. And I was almost done for the day, and I heard this sound, and it sounded like, people talking, but I couldn't quite make it out. And I thought, I don't know why I thought it, because there's just no way it would have been. I thought there was tourists had gotten lost, that they had, I don't know what they would have been looking for. That place there was nothing there to do. I was in the middle of nowhere, and I was doing a survey for a timber cell. And so I go, hey, someone out here, are you lost? Gibberish keeps continuing. I said, hey, I'm over here. If you need, walk towards me and I'll help you. And then it just went quiet. Never heard another sound. And I was like, okay, this is weird. And so a couple other weird stuff happened. And I just said, that's it. I'm finishing my survey, hiking back to my vehicle, and I'm just going to be done. And so I finally done, get back to my truck. There's nothing else parked there. There's no other vehicles. There's nothing. I start driving out. And this was more of like a trailhead, kind of parking, but there's no trail in the area. It was just a place. No, the road stopped and I parked. And so I drive out of there. I don't see any other vehicles anywhere at all. And so it was just like, I don't know what that was, but, God bless them. If they're going to come back out, they must have parked somewhere else. It never dawned on me that it could have been anything else. So.
That's a really good story.
Yeah.
It is. It seems like you've had quite a few experiences. These things are real. We know that. I've seen them. Russ has somewhat seen them. You've seen them. So that is, we can't even question that. Do you have, being an anthropologist, do you have an idea of maybe what they are as we're kind of winding things down here?
Yeah, I think they're in the ape. I mean, we're apes.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. People always get upset. Well, I'm not an ape. Yes, you are. You are.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
And I believe they're apes. I do not believe they're Homo sapien. I think they're something that's evolved on its own. It's what its common ancestor is, the last common ancestor, probably in the Rang family somewhere. I see absolutely no evidence that they can make tools, use fire, anything of that sort. And they don't need it. They absolutely don't need it. And my mom used to, I told her this story one time about, when he just died, it was the last remaining tribal member down in the Amazon, and he lost all his tribe, had been killed off because people wanted the land so they could farm, and he was all by himself, and he continued his ways all the time by himself up until, when he died. And my mom was like, oh, they should have gone in there and helped him and blah, blah, blah. And I said, why? I said, like the Bigfoot, they don't have the problems that we have. They don't have politics, or credit card bills, or student loans, or all these things that just crush us as humans. They're living the good life. They get up when they want to get up. They go get some food. They get some drinks. They sit down and do whatever they do to entertain themselves. And then the next day they do it again. And they're content doing that. So why do anything else? They're where we were as humans before somebody invented the wheel.
Well, yeah, it's great. I like taking hot showers and stuff like that. But honestly, we would be projecting ourselves onto them. And, just because you have more stuff doesn't mean you're happier. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's just, you have a house. Well, now they got a house. Now I'm kind of in this contract with the government because I got to pay property tax on my house. If I don't pay property taxes, I can't have my house. So now I got to have a job to pay those taxes. Otherwise, it's going to take my house. And now I got to get to work. So I got to, have a car. Now I got to have a bank account. Now I got to have all the stuff. Life was much simpler back then. So
yeah, and it's to the extent that I believe their bodies have evolved as much as you can in that time period to be the master of the outdoors. I mean, you don't have big, beautiful butt and thighs like that if you're not needing it to go up and down hills and all that stuff. And so, and the hair, of course, keeps their bodies cooler, and sweats and dirt and bugs and all that stuff that goes with that. And so they truly built for the environment that they're living in. And interesting enough, since we're winding up, I do see a difference between California Bigfoot and Oklahoma Bigfoot. So California, they're yellers. They like to scream a lot, and it's pretty. We tended to be very successful using like the Ohio howl or the Tahoe screaming and listening and getting a response back. In Oklahoma, that's not successful at all, and so there are those regional differences in the sense of I don't know. Is it because they just don't need to yell in Oklahoma because that's not how they communicate? Maybe that's what wood knocking is to them. Versus in California, they're so distant from each other, they need that projected scream in order to get attention. And so those are the kinds of things that I find very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to tell the people listening, of course, Kathy's book is Giants, Cannibals, and Monsters. And, you know, it's her look at native culture, how Bigfoot may have interacted there, and some of the stories with the different tribes, and how some of them have been related to Bigfoot. And of course, that's always so interesting because we know that if Bigfoot exists, that the first people would have certainly had interactions with them. But how can people get a hold of this? Or I know Brad always asks, so I'm kind of taking his spot when people want to reach out and find you. How can they do that?
Yeah, you can reach me on Facebook, but you can get the book at my publisher. It's hancockhouse.com. And they probably have the biggest Bigfoot-related book publisher there is. And so if you're looking for certain things, they'll have it. And they do a good job of it. I mean, and the original printing from 2008 is out, has sold out. And so they're on the second printing of the book. So the first one is quite beautiful. So if you have my signature on that, we would have had to have met at some point, right?
Just by email and things. I think I reached out to you and got you to one way or another to sign it for me and send it to me, but that was years ago.
Years ago.
But it's the pictures in it are so nice and so professional, and just really let you understand the culture of each tribe. I really enjoyed it. And you know, it's years ago, you know, I probably have several hundred Bigfoot books, but I pulled it out and looking at it, and I was like, gosh, this is so nice. You know what I mean? Just enjoyed revisiting it. But I mean, I so hope that we get to meet sometime in the future
It'd be
along
nice.
these paths. And, you know, I had a lot of questions asked here. I wanted to ask a bunch of questions about the book. I wanted to hear about you being stuck on the cliff, but maybe sometime you'll come back and talk to Brad and I, and you can tell us about these things.
Sure. I don't know if I want to remember being stuck on the cliff. That was
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it. Tell Bob we said hi, and we appreciate stealing you for a while.
Oh, thank you for having me. Very enjoyable.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, that was fun. That was easy.
Yeah, I mean, she's great.
Yeah, when you got a lot of stories and she's got a lot of experience, especially, you know, at Area X, you know, that's probably some of the greatest stories we've heard out of there. So no, that's pretty. She was very entertaining for the hours.
You know, it's kind of off the topic, but she made me think about it when she's talking about how fast it seems to go as we age. And, you know, there's some studies out now that the reason why that we think that aging goes so quickly is because we're just not learning new things. Right. You know, when you're young, you're learning something new and seeing something new. So, you know, I guess that's encouraging for us to get out there.
I try to learn something every day, which
I think that's a good habit, my friend. Sometimes
I don't want to learn. But I don't want to learn what's out there and what's coming down the pipe for us as humans on this continent. So
I agree.
We will see. Anyway, I was thinking the only thing I was thinking was, man, if they would have had a thermal drone.
Yeah.
Because I know that they had they went up in an airplane. They tracked it in an airplane at one time, and they had some 4-wheelers and things like that.
Yeah.
But if you could have got a thermal drone up close to it, you could really cover that area, get down on the foliage, something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get that thermal on. Very possible you could have got something. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's coming. You know what I mean? Like, hopefully it'll be us that does it, but it's coming somewhere.
It's coming
for sure.
Somewhere. Absolutely.
Like, subscribe.
Yep.
thebigfootdoc.com.
There you go.
West
Wide
Virginia
Open
Bigfoot
Research.
on page.
Wide
Open research on Instagram, TikTok.
Yeah, anything. I
all
don't do
those
TikTok,
things.
but anyway, go ahead.
All right.
All right. I know. We're out.
Anything else you want to say, my friend?
No, we're out.
Hey, thanks everybody. We really appreciate you.
Yep. Don't buy an EV car.